Assalamu alaikum again. I apologize for the interruption. So we were talking about the self-purification of Imam Nawawi radiyallahu anhu, and some of the signs of that in his lifetime were that he was someone that was very simple in his material needs. So he took care to remain that way. So very simple clothing, very simple housing and accommodations, and also a very simple sustenance as far as his diet was concerned. So he's also someone that it should be noted was living by his principles. So it wasn't just a matter of book knowledge to him. It was a matter of acting on what he was learning and actively teaching. And so he lives by his principles, and not just by principles at a sort of base minimum level, but the highest of values, right? So reflecting in his character and action the highest of values. And we'll take some examples of that. So as far as the minimal diet was concerned, we're told that he would be sent bread and olives from his home village in Nawa. So his father, Sharafuddin, as we said, who had invested in him at an early age, is now, at a later stage in his life, would send him daily his, kind of bread and olives. Very simple diet. And so he would survive off of this. And it's said that, he would only eat after Isha, and that then he would drink 1 glass of water after Fajr. So as you can see, it's sort of very frugal, very simple, and he's a person of the village. I don't know if that, is really historically accurate to say, or reflective of what the motivations might be, but very simple in his diet, and then he's also someone with great moral scrupulosity and caution. So he abstains actually from eating from the food that's provided by the school itself, right? So that's another way of sort of holding his own in a way. He doesn't want to be provided by creation, or be provided. Rather, he wants to always be in the giving position. So as I said, his father is sending him daily some bread and olives for his daily sustenance, and he's not actually taking from the reserves of the school itself. And again, these are also, just to be clear, these are not things that are required of us, but he is living a life that's reflecting the highest of values, right? And the most sort of beautiful expression of those values. That is his intention. So far as it concerns us. Now, also, he's a person of deep focus. He knows what he's here for, as we talked about this concept of the scholars of the Akhirah. They know that their time on this earth is literally like a treasure. It's the only thing that they have that allows them to reach God and be with God in the next life and in this life as well, but to be given his reward that he's promised. And so they treat it that way. So part of the simplicity in the diet, right, and there is also sort of connected to the saving of time, because then you don't have or need time to actually cook and prepare food, and you can really focus on what you're there for. So this sort of minimalistic lifestyle is really what allows him and others like him to take on course loads and sort of a regimen of study that's very difficult to imagine for us in our sort of modern day context at times. He also, as a teacher, I talked to you about this concept of him holding his own. So as a teacher, Imam Nawawi radiallahu anhu refuses salary for his service. He doesn't take salary from the school. So he's doing it for God purely, right? And again, these are not things that are required. A teacher can take a salary and be paid for it, right? Even if they're a part of a religious educational institution, for example. There's nothing wrong with them taking a salary for their services. However, he is purifying his intentions in action by not mixing his service to God's creation, by having this secondary motivation, even have a chance at impacting his intention for God, right? So this is sort of the mentality behind these sorts of um, you know higher values and trying to act them out. Now, he did not eat also from the city of Damascus. So we said he was from Nawa, and then he moved to Damascus at age 18. But the reason he doesn't eat from any food within the city is because he knew that some of the awqaf, some of the endowed properties, had been misappropriated, right? And because they were misappropriated, he did not, again, want to take from those places where there was a question, right? So you can begin to see that he has concern. His religion doesn't stop at the ritual. You can see that his religion expands into social occurrences and happenings, and he is aware of his environment, right? And he's engaging it in a very particular way based on knowledge of it. So he's refusing to take from these properties because they're misappropriated. So this is a huge lesson for us, right? As modern Muslims, that sometimes get completely absorbed in the rituals to the point where we cannot, please forgive any background noise, we cannot focus on really connecting these rituals back to our sense of justice and equity in the societies that we are a part of, So you can see that this great scholar and luminary of our tradition is someone that's really living by these principles and making these connections. Okay, now I want to talk briefly about his concern for society. His concern for society is immense. As I mentioned, he has this sense of, wanting to ensure that he's aware of what's going on, and that he's connected to the people. So I also mentioned that earlier that, Imam Nawawi is one of those scholars, radiyallahu anhu, that not only focuses on, not only does he gain a kind of, not only does he stand out to his peers, other scholars, other people of repute in these institutions of knowledge, in these legal institutions that we spoke of his time, but he also is really going to stand out, he's going to be ahead of people in a certain sense. So let me get into that. So one of the beautiful stories from his lifetime is that, as I mentioned, he's living in the time of the Mongols and the Crusaders, and he's living under the sort of regime of Sultan Baybars. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but Sultan Baybars is a powerful Islamic ruler in his time, in his own right, because he is able to sort of dissipate the threat of the Crusaders, and he famously wins a important, well, I don't want to sort of mix my historical facts, so what I'll say is that so Sultan Baybars was someone that really pushed back the Crusaders, and he also pushes back on the Mongols. So he is a powerful Islamic ruler in his own right, and he's Imam Nawawi is living under his reign, and it's said that one of his policies, Sultan Baybars' policies, was very unfair to the common people. The tax that was imposed on the masses was unfair, and The Sultan, however, was able to get the support of the other legal scholars and people of prestigious position in his time to issue a fatwa, basically, a legal verdict supporting this policy. And Imam Nawawi radiallahu anhu is the only one amongst this class, this scholarly class, that stands up and says, no, I'm not going to comply with this. I'm not going to issue a fatwa. And so he famously says, to Sultan Baybars, that I have heard that you have 1,000 slaves, and each one of them possesses a large amount of gold. In addition, you own 200 concubines, and each of them has a vessel full of jewelry. If you donate all of these treasures to fund your campaigns, i.e. your military campaigns and expeditions, I will issue you a fatwa to collect your taxes from the people. And so here you can see that Imam Nawawi is basically pushing back, saying, look, you have all this wealth, you use that wealth appropriately, in the defense of the religion, in the spread of the religion, then I can consider what you're trying to do here, because I will know that you have the right intention in mind. So he pushes back. And so Sultan Baybars is very upset with him. And the context of this is, by the way, that once Imam Nawawi does not comply immediately with issuing the fatwa, as the other legal and prestigious religious scholars did in his time, the Sultan Baybars, invites Imam Nawawi to his own abode and sits him down to get him to sign the fatwa, right? And he does not sign, and this is the quote that I read out to you, is what he ends up saying. And so Sultan Baybars is very upset, very angry, and he orders Imam Nawawi into exile. And so Imam Nawawi leaves Damascus, where he was studying and teaching, or mostly teaching, at this time, and writing as a scholar once he, graduates from his program. And Imam Nawawi at this stage returns to Nawa, his hometown and home village, and the other scholars then pressure the Sultan to invite him back, basically invite Imam Nawawi back, and so a letter is sent to Imam Nawawi, to that effect, and then Imam Nawawi radiallahu anhu replies, saying, I will never enter Damascus as long as Baybars is in it. I will never enter Damascus as long as Baybars is in it. So, these sorts of, this sense of self-dignity is so beautiful and part of our faith tradition. And interestingly, the story goes that once he writes this letter and has this firm response, Sultan Baybars dies after a month from the time of the Imam's letter. And it's said that after his passing, then the Imam returns to Damascus to teach again. So what's my point here, and what do I want to kind of emphasize? This is not a religion that doesn't take the needs of the common people into consideration, especially people of privilege. And the scholarly class were people of privilege in that society. Scholars of religion in our society are not so much, right? And they don't have the same power and influence. Here they did. They had influence over the legal and political institutions. They had influence over the rulers. And so they're exercising that power in responsible ways. And they are concerned about the common people. And I think whatever privileges and power that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, worldly powers, has bestowed upon us in this lifetime, whether it be wealth or security, we've got to be politically astute and aware, and we've got to use it and herald that power within the systems we find ourselves in, in ways that support the vast majority of people. We have an obligation to do that, and inshallah, may Allah make us amongst those that are not oblivious of these sorts of this side of Islam that gets kind of put under the rug sometimes, or that we sometimes just feel confused about how exactly to engage. So let me now, forgive me, I think the presentation got a little long. We're gonna now conclude with just saying a word on Imam Nawawi's death, radiallahu anhu. So after 28 years of service, of teaching, of writing, Imam Nawawi famously returns to his hometown of Nawa. And before leaving, he returns all of the books he borrowed from the library, and he visits the graves of his teachers to pray for their souls. He cries, he visits his friends, he bids them farewell. And on Wednesday, the 24th of Rajab, at the age of 45, very young age, Imam Nawawi returns to his Lord. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. That, inshallah, brings us to the conclusion of our presentation today. I really pray that this has been beneficial. We kind of know the heart and the life behind the text that we'll be covering, inshallah, in the subsequent 4 Fridays. But I do hope that this provides you with some food for thought, some reflection, some discussions. And please do email me. My email is my first initial, last name Saleem 85@gmail.com. That's my personal email. Please let me know your thoughts, your suggestions, how we can make this better. Forgive me for the length of time it took today, but inshallah we'll work on that and make it a bit more succinct. Barakallahu feekum, assalamu alaikum, Jummah Mubarak. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Rabbana atina fid dunya hasana wa fil akhirati hasana wa qina adhaban nar. اللهم أرنا الحق حقا وارزقنا اتباعه وأرنا الباطل باطلا وارزقنا اجتنابه. اللهم ارزقنا حسن الخاتمة. اللهم ارزقنا حسن الخاتمة. نصر من الله وفتح قريب وبشر المؤمنين. آمين يا رب العالمين.